Welcome to One-on-One with Mitch Lafon, and joining me on this episode from the band STYX, it is keyboardist vocalist Lawrence Gowan. We talk about their new Live at the Orleans Arena in Las Vegas DVD. Plus, Gowan, as he is known to us Canadians, has a couple of reissues available for the first time, so do check that out. Before then, head over to Twitter and check me out at Mitch Lafon, and on Facebook, One-on-One Mitch Lafon. If you would like to support the podcast, I have a paypal.me/Mitch Lafon link that you can also follow. And now, here is the one, the only, Lawrence Gowan. We are speaking with Lawrence Gowan of the band STYX, or as us Canadians know him, just simply Gowan. Good day. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
And good day to you, Mitch. It's nice to talk to you. Nice to have both of me on the line talking to Mitch Lafon today. Yeah.
Yes. Well, in fact, maybe we can start there, because we are going to talk about the STYX Live at the Orleans Arena in Las Vegas, but there is sort of this dichotomy, especially for Canadian fans, of there's Lawrence Gowan, the guy in STYX, and Gowan, the criminal mind that we saw in Much Music. Do you approach your career with that kind of dichotomy also, in terms of you're focused one way for STYX and you get prepared and focused another way for Gowan? Because you still do solo shows.
Yes, I do. I think I do prepare in subtly different ways. Let's put it that way. It's not like an overt thing where I suddenly put on the Gowan mask.
No, but I mean, there is some kind of theater to it where you have to prepare, right? I mean,
definitely.
A Stanley Cup game is not a preseason game kind of thing, right?
That's a very good analogy. I think I've never played in the Stanley Cup game, but you're absolutely right. There's a sense that, first of all, I guess the simple line to draw is that with STYX, it's I'm always aware of the fact that I'm part of this legendary band that existed long before my coming into it, even though I've nearly been in it 2 decades now. I'm into my 18th year. But the legacy of that band is part of what is being presented on stage. And my entering the scene, so to speak, I guess if you wanted to use a hockey analogy again, because I don't mind doing that. It's so rare in the U.S. interviews I can do that. But it's like bringing a guy in who's got a specific talent that specifically fits the needs of that group of people, and then they go on to do great things together, and it kind of changes the dynamic to some degree. But the fans are still happy because they're still they're still able to accomplish, what they want them to do. And in our case, it's put on a pretty killer rock show. I'm as entertained by it as anybody else when I look at this band on stage, and year after year elevate what we can present live, and continue the life of this band. When I do my solo stuff, as I did, just last week, we did 3 Gowan shows. 2 weeks ago now. We had 3 Gowan shows, and 2 of them were festivals. And so we had over 9,000 at the first one, and we had over 17,000 at the second one. And it was that's the first time I've done those Gowan shows like that since I joined STYX. And so playing to big audiences like that, and having my solo band, which is pretty smoking, and it's a different emotional connection to it. It's more straight from my own DNA, so to speak, I guess, that it harkens back to the very beginning, the very fiber of me wanting to, dreaming of being able to do this for my life, and then seeing those songs connect with people and hearing audiences sing, Strange Animal or Moonlight Desires. It's a very gratifying feeling, is the best way I can put it, really. It's just I really do have the best of both worlds, and I'm a very fortunate person.
Yeah, you really are, and of course now I've got Moonlight Desires playing through my head. Boy,
okay,
some great song. I mean, was it surprising then for you in past shows that STYX allowed you to do Gowan songs in their set, because they've got such a great back catalog that they could play 4 hours and still not run out of greatest hits? And here comes sort of the new guy, and go ahead and do Criminal Mind.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. They as JY says, they have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to choices of songs to play. But I'll tell you what, the lineage of STYX playing A Criminal Mind. Let me kind of illuminate where that came from. When I played in Montreal, when I opened at the first for STYX in 1997 at the was then the new Molson Center.
Right.
Yeah, at that point, as the brand new Montreal Forum, I'll always call it.
Right.
Well, it was one of those kind of incredible nights where there were multi encores, and I held back A Criminal Mind till the very end. And by that point in the show, the whole band, STYX, were all standing side stage, and when they heard the audience singing the chorus, they said, when I came off, Tommy Shaw said to me right away, he said, okay, first of all, no one's ever had an encore before us playing. So you just had 3. And second of all, we're definitely going to work together again. So those two cryptic kind of prophetic lines, it's funny, a couple of years later when they called and asked me to join the band, I reminded him of that, and he said, yeah, of course I do remember it. And I said, but when you called me, I immediately assumed that it was to open shows for you. So in that meeting, I had learned, I think I learned Crystal Ball, and I learned Grand Illusion, I think Lady. And I was about to go into one of those, and Tommy said, no, don't play a STYX song. Play the last song that you played in Montreal that night, which is A Criminal Mind. And by the time I finished it, he'd already picked up a guitar and was playing along with it. And he went, okay, we got to make that a STYX song now. And that's really how I started in the band. The very first song we ever played together was A Criminal Mind. And, and then we went on to see if our voices and harmonies would blend well on those signature STYX choruses. That kind of sealed the deal. But they, in that first year of me being in the band, he was like, okay, we got to work up A Criminal Mind and start getting it into the show. And so we've got it on. I think it's available on 3 different live records. I know we did it in an orchestra show, and we did it in a Pittsburgh show at one point. And I like the STYX version of the song a lot as well. And truly, it's a song that changed my life twice.
Yeah, it really did. Just going back to those early days, was there a reticence to join a band like STYX? Because the voice that you were replacing and the piano player you were replacing was so iconic that,
yeah.
Were you almost sort of destined to fail in a sense where people were going to always compare you? And of course you haven't, but did you have that in the mind? Like, oh, what am I going to get into? This is going to ruin my career because I'm not that guy. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's well put. It wasn't. It's funny. It's only when I do an interview with people who are familiar with, like yourself, Mitch, who are familiar with my life prior to STYX, that they would frame a question in that way. Usually, the interviews I do, in the United States, it's usually, oh my God, were you scared? Were these are big shoes to fill? And those are all very true sentiments, but. Quite honestly, the great thing, and I'll harken back to that very first meeting we had, the great thing about this band and what made me lean toward it was that they never asked me, not once on the very first meeting and not once until here we are, 17 plus years later, not once did they ever ask me to replicate or imitate or in any way do any sort of impression of Dennis DeYoung in the band. And in fact, it was never even put that I was replacing anyone in the band. It was simply like, we don't have this guy anymore. We'd like you to join. And you do the songs the way that you feel they can resonate with you the best. And, so of course I studied their old records, and I love particularly the keyboard parts that are in those songs. And I learned those, almost exactly note for note and etc. But I've made some alterations along the way. But vocally, I approach it the very same way that I would approach a Gowan show, far more than I would approach trying to do any sort of imitation from the past. And quite frankly, Mitch, I think, and we've discussed this many times, I think that's part of the reason that the band has been so successful over the years that I've been with them. We've played more shows with this lineup than any previous lineup of the band ever in its history. I think that the bands, you know, when Phil Collins moved up front in Genesis, let's just use a little bit of historical stuff.
Right.
When he moved up front, he sounded nothing like Peter Gabriel, and he sounded exactly like Peter Gabriel simultaneously, because I believe that the spirit of the band was extended through his manner of delivering the songs. And it confounded me way back then, because I was such a fan of Gabriel, and still am, that, take, for example, Supper's Ready. I absolutely loved the Peter Gabriel vocal of the live version of that, but I found myself equally loving the Phil Collins Supper's Ready. And they sound completely different, and yet they still, the spirit of the music is every bit as intact and authentic. And I think that bands that have had to go through a rather dramatic change, where a key member is suddenly, no longer there. I think the bands that try to make the band better, but not replicate or imitate what they did in the past, I think they're the ones that tend to have survived that transition better than others. I'd say Van Halen's another very good example. So there are great examples there, and so that's why I think it's been successful. But I didn't just immediately jump in with both feet. I thought, I don't want to leave my Gowan world behind entirely, but this is a really exciting and kind of interesting and unexpected offer that I've been given here, and I want to see where it goes.
Yeah, and I'm so glad it worked out, because it really was a double-edged sword. If it had failed, you would have been the guy that failed, and that would have been your tag forever. No, but it's true, and that would have been bad for business, right?
I suppose it would have been, but honestly,
it succeeded.
Yeah, go ahead. Finish, Mitch.
No. I don't want to harp on it too often. It's just that those are life decisions sometimes that are just.
Yeah.
It's either going to be all good or it's just going to be no good. And with you, here we are, 18 years later. You're still the new guy, but it's 18 years later.
I love still being the new guy. I want to be the new guy forever.
Right.
But you're right. It's and it's always up for debate. There are people, who are adamant that the band is no longer as good ever since, but they've went through it before. After their fifth album, when John Serluski left the band and Tommy Shaw joined, there were people back then who were like, oh, who's this new guy?
Right.
That seems ludicrous now, to think that when Tommy's such an integral part of the sound of all the biggest albums that the band's made. And again, when Tommy Shaw was out of the band in 1990, they still had a successful record because they brought in a guy that was very talented and was able to pull them through that transition. And the same thing in 1999. And quite honestly, I think one of the greatest compliment I ever hear from people, the one that I feel is really the most heartfelt, is when someone will say to me, I saw the band in 1980 and I just saw you guys in 2016. And the band is as good, if not better than ever. That means the lineage has been kind of passed along and the band has survived. And really, we are the culmination of the efforts of everyone who's ever been in the band from the very beginning.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, we are talking about STYX live at the Orleans Arena in Las Vegas. We've done, like you've mentioned, a few interviews before, and we've talked about mostly live releases or, I think it was Regeneration. Where are we in terms of new music? Because STYX, again, is one of those bands where you don't need to do any new music. You could ride it out for the next 25 years on the greatest hits. You put STYX on the marquee. Yeah. We know what we're getting.
Yeah. We're very much aware of that, but we're also aware this is a pretty clever brain trust that is around this band, in this band. We're aware that we could do that, Mitch, and we have, the Live at Orleans is another live record to kind of give you a little signpost of where we are, or where we were actually when we recorded that show, which is about a year ago. Or maybe a year and a half, or anyway.
2 years, I think, 2014.
Oh my God, is it really? Oh, geez.
Yeah. And by the way, I've seen it. It's absolutely fantastic. So I do recommend people go pick it up. But go on.
I was going to say that those are little, like I say, little signposts that to kind of say here we are today. But what the public are unaware of, and intentionally so, is that we work away on new music all the time, and we play new things in sound checks and etc. But we're clever, we're savvy enough, let's call it that, to know that in the music in business the way it is today, just throwing out new material without a proper plan behind how to promote it and how to put the focus on it and get the spotlight on it correctly, that's kind of it's an endeavor that goes by the wayside. So what we do instead is we have been in the studio, we do have new material, and there will come a point when it's time to release it. That's the best promise I can give to people, that it exists, and I think it's very good, and that's up to the public to decide once it finally comes out. But I think that people should know that the creative wheels keep turning in the background, and it's part of what inspires us to keep making the show better and better, because we feel that the band is still vital and still has something to offer.
Yeah, I agree. The band is vital, and I have seen the live show, and it never fails to impress. Now, I know we're going to run out of time, so I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about Gowan, because there is some exciting news. There's in fact three things from what I understand. There is the two back catalog releases, Lost Brotherhood and But You Can Call Me Larry, that are being released for the first time in God knows how long. I guess some of them as far back as 1990, I guess. And then there's a new Gowan album. So let's talk with those re-releases.
Yeah, sure. First of all, 1990, the album Lost Brotherhood came out. But first of all, Mitch, I should say both these records, there's 6 Gowan studio records in total. Both these records were tied up in some legal, red tape for years, and therefore they were not available on iTunes. But it's amazing how many STYX shows I've played where people will be holding copies of Lost Brotherhood or You Can Call Me Larry, and they've got them on eBay or Amazon or some vintage shops or however they came up with them. But Lost Brotherhood came out originally in 1990. It featured the two guys, Jerry Marotta and Tony Levin from Peter Gabriel's band, and also Ken Greer from Red Rider. But most of all, it really the most noteworthy inclusion in the band of that record is Alex Lifeson of Rush. And when I think that's 26 years ago now that record came out, and Alex was really hoping to make a name for himself as a guitarist in the rock world at that point, and he's really done so well ever since. And I peg it all back to the Lost Brotherhood album. I know
who doesn't, right?
Absolutely everyone does.
It was so nice of you to give him his big break.
And I'm so happy he mentioned it in his speech at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when he did his acceptance of that. It was one of the blah blahs in there was all about Lost Brotherhood, so that was very nice of him to remember. But it's a strong record, and it's a real rocking piece of work, and it really is being released in 1990. It was the culmination of the Gowan sound that we come up with throughout the 1980s. It really was that. And then in contrast to that, you roll ahead to 1993 when the You Can Call Me Larry record came out, and that was sonically and production-wise and in songwriting-wise and in just about every way a real shift and a real change that marked a different decade of music, and my own little inclusion in it, and how I saw fitting myself into that into the music scene at that point. And that record, it wound up having 4 songs got into the top 10, and a couple of them just for being most played. One of them, Dancing on My Own Ground, just last year got the SOCAN Classic Award, so it's been played over 100,000 times on the radio. And it's funny now how it's still to this day, that's a lot of people, that's their favorite Gowan record, and they relate more to the Gowan records that came out in the 90s than they do in the 80s. And so I'm really happy that both of them come out on Friday on iTunes. We've got all the art. We've added to the artwork that came out at the time. We found old pictures and old other things to add to the package of it, and I'm really kind of thrilled about them coming out.
Yeah, I've always actually wanted to ask you about the title, but you can call me Larry, because it was Gowan, and Strange Animal was Gowan. It's Gowan.
Yeah.
Was this some kind of acknowledgement that, like you said, the music scene was changing? Maybe you needed to rebrand yourself. Like, was there a deeper meaning to that title?
There was a deeper meaning to it, and it was as deep and as superficial as the title itself sounds. When we finished the record, I'm a fan of clever marketing. I always have been. I think that's part of why I embraced the music video in the 1980s so fervently. It was that I really saw it as a great way to convey music and to to draw people's attention to it. So I'm all for that. And in 93, when we finished that album, and it sounded so different, and my demeanor was different from the 80s, because we were basically acknowledging the fact that the moment the grunge scene happened in, let's call it early 1991, let's call it that, it completely supplanted the bands and the big hair and the mullets and and the mannerisms of the 1980s were really left in the dust. Now they've resurfaced in recent years to where now it's a very respected decade of music, and I'm still discovering great stuff from the 80s that I'd never even heard at the time. But when we came to make the title of that record, the marketing department at Sony, it becomes Sony then, and at Anthem, were God, all the bands have been from the 80s have just been wiped off the map almost. They're not getting played on radio or television, and their concerts aren't doing as well. And grunge and the singer-songwriter movement of the unplugged movement has completely supplanted that. So they said, are you sure you still want to be a one-name guy? Because the one-name acts like Prince and Madonna, and they suddenly seem relegated to the past. It's amazing how fast the world of music can move. And I said, I'm fine with using my full name. Why don't we just make it that? And I said, I'll just be, everyone I play hockey with calls me Larry, so let's make it Larry Gowan. And it was our manager, Ray Daniels, who also still manages Rush, believe it or not, even though they've broken up. But, sorry, they haven't broken up. What am I saying?
They have stopped touring.
They've stopped touring, exactly. Right. So he's still, but Ray, he said, well, first of all, your real name is Lawrence Gowan, and that's what your family's always called you, and that's your true full name. So he says, why don't we just make the album Lawrence Gowan? And then as he's walking out the door after we'd had enough of this meeting, because we kicked it around enough, he he looked over his shoulder, he goes, but you can call me Larry. And I remember my jaw dropped open, and I thought, I know he's just making a joke, but that to me is the right way to distance in some way, or not to distance, but to draw a line between what I was doing on that record and what I had done in the 80s. And I thought, Lawrence Gowan, but you can call me Larry. The fact that it sounds like a used car salesman kind of ties in with where the thinking was. And I can tell you, Mitch, it was fun that whole year of touring, because all the disc jockeys across Canada and VJ people, for years they'd been warned and flagged that, look, you only call him Gowan. And suddenly it was like, well, now you got three names, and every time I came on the air, they went, it's Gowan. We know you as Gowan, but Lawrence Gowan, but can I call you Larry? And that became the kind of thing. And we even had pins that year that just said Larry on them. And I think that was our highest selling little piece of merchandise. And, it was just a way of acknowledging that things change. And if you want to move on with your life in music, you may have to make some changes yourself.
That's great. And it's funny because whenever I do an interview with you, if it's for STYX, I think to myself, I got to call him Lawrence Gowan. And if it's for something else, I think, okay, I got to call him Gowan. Like I even have that sort of name branding in my head, which is kind of bizarre.
I know it is. It is, but that just means that you were following along the bouncing ball.
Right. I tell you right. I paid attention. I know that we're running out of time, but you do have a new album coming out just before we run out, when is that going to come out, and what are we looking at? Is it sort of, here's the new me? Is it Strange Animal, going back to those songs? What are we doing?
I wish I knew when it's going to come out, because STYX, it does eat up a whole lot of the year. Having said that, I'm so happy that I did this record, that it's there, and it will eventually come out, and hopefully, sooner than later. But it's an amalgam of stuff that I'd written in the 1970s, nothing that I'd done in the 1980s, but something that I came back to kind of in the late 90s a little bit, but then really came back fervently to while I've been working with STYX. And I've kind of updated, etc. And it's a conceptual piece, and I don't really want to go any deeper than that, but just to say that it's a conceptual piece that, if it were to come out today, it would probably be a double album. I'd put it on vinyl, and maybe that's what we will wind up doing. But as I say, it's got to, at this point, it still has to remain in the wings until I'll bet the new STYX album comes out prior to the next Gowan record. So yeah.
And I'll just finish on this question then. Is it more freeing now at this stage in your career to write music and put out albums? Because in the beginning, you're trying to make a name and you're trying to get a single and you're trying to please.
Yeah.
Now you just put it out and it's like you have a fan base. You'll still be on tour with STYX. You can just put out what you want, basically. Do you sense that?
You can, Mitch. But just putting something out for the sake of putting it out is I think is kind of foolhardy. But to your point, it is nice now that you don't have, there are no strict guidelines anymore. Rock music is such a ubiquitous, it's such a all-encompassing musical statement that spans over 60 years at this point. And you can pretty much use any inspiration and bring it into the fold now, because people's ears have attuned to this broad musical statement that rock music is. And so, yes, it is quite freeing to sit in a hotel room, as I am today, and pick up the guitar, go over to the keyboard, and come up with something that really I don't absolutely need to have immediate commercial success in order for it to be successful, but more to be something that just kind of helps my spirit move along and gives me something to think about and to tinker with, in that sense. And one day, likely it will emerge, and we'll hear what other people have to say about it.
I'm very much looking forward to it. And of course, I do look forward to not only the next STYX show, but the next solo Gowan show, because the last one I saw, I think, was 2011 or 2012.
I know, but you know what we're going to do? We have to get some shows in Quebec. I've already said it to our manager, our STYX manager, and to our booking agent. We get a lot of offers throughout the year, and I was only able to squeeze in a few Ontario shows this year. But that's high on my agenda, is to get to play some Gowan shows in Quebec.
Yeah, it's a necessity, and always a pleasure. By the way, speaking to you, I look forward to not only the next STYX interview, but the next Gowan interview as well.
That's great, Mitch. Great to talk to you as well, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Okay, man.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Cheers.
Bye, Mitch.
And there you have it, folks. My interview with Lawrence Gowan, or as we like to call him in Canada, Gowan, talking about STYX, his reissues, and a lot more. Please check me out on Twitter at Mitch Lafon, Facebook one-on-one Mitch Lafon, and paypal.me/Mitch Lafon. Thank you for listening, and bye for now. Oh my.